Welcome back, folks, for another episode of the Backmarkers F1 Show. This edition will be previewing the Austrian Grand Prix, and we're very happy to be back in our regular studio location, and very happy to be back is Shaker. Welcome back home.
2 weeks away, yeah. I'm excited to be home. Italy and Croatia was beautiful, but yeah, I'm kind of excited to be back home in Canada and actually have nice weather. From what I heard was pretty much rain throughout the entire time I was gone.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're starting to finally get some summer weather here now, just in time, and it seems like all across Europe too, and other parts of the world, it's pretty
very
warm
hot.
now.
Yeah, it was funny because I was talking to a lot of people from there. They're like, "Oh yeah, like Canada, like you guys are really cold." I was like, "Yeah, but like we get a summer, like we have a summer." They're like, "Oh, like
Eventually.
what?" They're like, "What is it? Like 10 degrees?" I'm like, "No, man, like it's above 25 to 30 degrees. Like with the humidity, it can get up to 40. Like last year, it was probably like the warmest summer we had, close to like 40, above 30, like almost every single day." And they're like, "Really?" I was like, "Yes, like." We're not just a cold country.
It just doesn't last that long.
No, that's just it. Like we'll have 8 months of like cold, with not just strict winter, but with fall and everything. But yeah, like we get a summer. It's just like 2 to 3 months.
Yeah,
That's about it.
yeah. So that's good. But overall, it was a good trip.
Really
Enjoyed
good
it.
trip. Yeah, Italian people and Croatian people are fantastic. Super helpful. They assumed I was American every time though. And as soon as I told them they were Canadian, it was like a full like 180 of how they were like
Much better service.
Much better service. Yeah, it was interesting because we did meet a few Americans on the trip, and they were really nice actually. We met a South Korean and a American couple who've been living in South Korea their entire life. And I guess the South Korea, like the wife, actually studied at University of Ottawa.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
Wow.
so we
Small
were
world.
a really small world. We were on our way back from the Rome airport after dropping off our vehicle, and yeah, we talked to them for like the entire like train ride back, and yeah, and then that's the first thing she said, like Canadian people are some of the nicest people I've ever met. And I'm like, I mean, we kind of have that rapport, you know.
Yeah, it's there's you go to the other countries too, and they're pretty good with tourists and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's nice. But I gotta say, like, as excited as we are to have you back, we're even more excited to have the newest addition to our set, courtesy of Shaker in Italy. This is the best thing that I've ever seen, probably in my life, and it's even a bobblehead. And not only that, but this thing is huge. Like,
It is pretty big, and I was telling you earlier, like I regret not buying it because it was like the very last day of our trip. But there was a Lewis Hamilton one as well, but like I was just out of the cash to buy the Lewis Hamilton one. I'm like, oh, you know what? Like, I'm gonna choose Vettel over Lewis Hamilton.
good choice. Yeah. So this confirms we are Ferrari fanboys.
It's true,
Right?
Yes, exactly.
I know some of you guys were complaining after that penalty, but now it's confirmed. So hopefully Seb will be bobbing his head after a win this weekend in
Exactly,
Austria.
that's what we're hoping for. There was only the two drivers. There was no other drivers. I was looking for Max Verstappen one for myself, but yeah, I only found the Vettel and the Lewis Hamilton one. Funny thing is, I actually saw one with Putin and Donald Trump next to Jesus.
Yeah, you were showing me that picture.
And it was basically like Donald Trump pointing towards Putin, and then with Jesus next to him going like this. And I was like, I mean, this is just the picture that I have to take. Like,
But I gotta say, like, that one, the picture you showed me, and then the Vettel one, they're really well made.
They were. I was really surprised. I tried to actually look for a Lewis Hamilton bobblehead after I was telling you guys I bought it the other night, and I didn't find any online, which was like surprising. Maybe, I mean, I didn't look very hard. I'm sure there's like some that you can like customize and order, but yeah, I think that one was close to 15 euros or something like that, 15, 20 euros.
Okay, that's not too bad. I
Yeah,
guess.
and like with the amount of detail that they had, I was really surprised. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's great. So it's going to sit proudly in our set, and once we get our newer table, we'll have even more room to place the rest of our stuff. But that's going to sit there until he wins the
Yeah.
Grand Prix. It's going to sit right there in the middle. So, yeah, maybe we are Ferrari fanboys in the end, right?
Just a little bit.
Okay, so before we get on to the Austrian Grand Prix, because we do have a race, obviously by the time that this comes out, probably the first or second pre-practice session will be over,
Mm-hmm.
so you guys can maybe kind of do a live compare as to what we're previewing. But I just wanted to actually get your quick thoughts because we weren't able to talk to you after you went to your first Formula One Grand Prix in Montreal.
Yeah,
You
that's
were
true.
there on Sunday, so how did you find your experience at your first race?
It was really cool. Like I only got like the general admission ticket, so I think we were right after turn 9, leading into the hairpin. I think that's where we were. I wish I walked around some more, but it was just such a hot day. Like the sun, it was kind of hard to like get out of the
Yeah.
shade. We tried to sit in the shade as much as we could, but it was really cool, man. I was like very impressed, and we walked the track a little bit afterwards, and walking to where the podium and stuff was, just to like see those cars like so close up was probably one of the coolest things. And then actually we were right in between like the fence area with 8 and 9, so we could actually see the cars very clearly going by. I was obviously following on my phone at the same time just to get updates because we weren't close to a screen. But yeah, it was a great experience. I think next year I would probably get a grandstand, and maybe like in front of a screen or something. But honestly, for my first experience, it was awesome. A lot of different fans. Like you would expect people to be fans of like the top six, but I saw hats from like the Renault one there. I saw a
Hmm.
lot of Force India hats, which was surprising because they weren't selling any there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was pretty cool. I was telling you guys this, but we got off, like, parked our car near Oldport in Montreal, walking towards a subway station, and I'm pretty sure we passed like the Red Bull hotel room, or like the Red Bull hotel, because there was a whole bunch of buses, a whole bunch of Mercedes and other cars, like basically parked out
Yeah.
front with drivers, with a lot of Red Bull shirts in front, and I didn't see any of like the team like leads pretty much, but there was a lot of them and with a lot of security outside. So we waited around like 15, 20 minutes, hoping I could get like a signature from Max, but no, unfortunately didn't have that opportunity. Um, but yeah, really well set up. Like all of Montreal kind of like gets right into it. All like the subways have signs everywhere, basically pointing you towards which way to take for the F1 race. Really well organized from the entire city, in my opinion. Like I didn't have any issues trying to find out which way to go. And even like, I think we mentioned this earlier, like uh, the track itself is on an island,
Yeah.
and like just the way it's set up, trying to get on, everything is a one way, and then towards the end, like just to get out, everything was super simple. I mean, obviously, like everything was really packed, but like I didn't have any issues trying to get through or anything like that. So yeah, it was a good experience overall. Like I said, just would do a few things differently next year.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And it's your first time there. I mean, you were there obviously with me last year doing the track
Yeah.
guide and stuff, but it takes kind of a year or two to sort of figure out where everything is and then to
Mhm.
find the best areas and stuff. So,
No, it was really really well done, and I mean pricey for like drinks and food, obviously,
of
but I was
course.
expecting that. It's such a big event that they're gonna do it, and yeah, like overall, it was a fantastic experience. I got my first sunburn there in my life.
Oh, did you
As
really?
a brown man, I
What?
got my first ever sunburn.
I didn't even know that was possible.
I didn't know either. I was shocked. I got home and I had like red all over my arms, and I was like started to peel a few days later, and I'm like, so this is what a sunburn feels like. It wasn't that bad though, like as what I've seen it, but like I had a few red marks, and even every time I showed somebody, they're like, "You actually got sunburned?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like it's shocking. It's the first time I've ever.
Yeah, it shows you how hot it was,
Yeah.
folks.
Like it was a hot day, and then I think you offered me and Caitlin both sunscreen, and we're like,
Yeah.
no, we'll be fine. But yeah, I kind of regret that now. But yeah, it was my first ever experience, so it was interesting.
I always do that too. I'm like, I don't need sunscreen, and then
Yeah,
I go back and I'm burned
yeah,
my face and everywhere. But it was the Sunday. It was warm. It was hot the first 2 days, and I think we were telling in our recap too. Like before then in Ottawa, it was cold.
yeah.
I mean, rain. It was like barely 15 degrees, and then all of a sudden this big heat wave comes in. But like that Sunday, I was dying on the grandstand
Oh, I can
toward the end.
imagine. I'm just like, and then we were talking to a few people afterwards, and it was super packed. Like with the grandstand, you're basically touching up. You're sitting like this the entire time.
Because it was funny when you were saying you'd rather have a grandstand seat, and it's a sort of yes and no answer because
Yeah,
the one side in the grandstand you get a little bit of a better view because you sit higher.
yeah,
So in some places you can see through the fence, and I'm sure it's like this in many circuits. But on the other hand, yeah, like it was so packed, and
yeah.
I sat on a different grandstand the year before, and there was just so many more people here, and there's not much space to go around, and then the sun is just beating straight down on you. So
Yeah, exactly.
no matter I really like the heat, but even for me, it was just like, it's really getting to
It
you.
was okay in the shade, like, 'cause like we started off sitting in the sun, and then basically when the sun went down a little bit, the trees helped us out and got us in the shade. But yeah, it was okay in the shade. But yeah, in direct sunlight, oh man, it was brutal.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's funny because I was comparing like paraphernalia and stuff that I bought. Like I bought myself a Red Bull hat. I was looking for a Renault hat as well. Um, and then I compared it to like the stuff because in Italy they have actual like genuine Ferrari shops, and I was
Right.
telling you guys they actually have what do you call it? Oh my god, I'm forgetting the name. But they have setups where you can actually go sit in they have like models of the cars and with the screens everywhere, so you can actually go sit and race in one of those on like the main floor that we were in Milan. And then, so comparing the prices, it was actually cheaper to buy stuff at the venue rather than go to a Ferrari shop and pick up like a Ferrari hat or anything like that.
Yeah.
Which was really surprising to me because I figured it'd be a little bit cheaper in the shops compared to going to the actual event.
Yeah. I mean, they take advantage, like you were saying before, with the drinks and stuff. They
Yeah,
just jack up the prices because you've got no other option. I think the most ridiculous thing, though, is how expensive the waters were.
yeah.
And that's like, the one thing where they should have just done a better job of is setting up some sort of cooling areas because, like it was bad.
Well, you know what
It's
I did
hot.
appreciate when we did walk into the track afterwards, like all the people who were working the events were handing out
Yes.
waters to all the people there, which
Yeah.
was really nice of them because like it was a hot day, especially as soon as you got into like the
Yeah.
asphalt and the track and stuff. It got much hotter.
Shout out to the marshals there.
Yeah, that was really nice of them to actually do that. But yeah, I think like what waters what like $6, $5 or $6.
I think it was like four or $5.
Yeah,
Yeah. But
yeah.
it was those small Fiji ones. So
Yeah.
I think it's barely 500 milliliters.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, that was kind of like probably the worst part about it. And I started drinking like beers and stuff, and I think I had my second beer. I'm like, there's no way I can have any more alcohol, like with the amount of heat that's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. Some people were going really hard in the grandstands too, and I'm like, oof, that's not going to work out well later.
And it was Lance Stroll's engine not Lance Stroll, sorry, Lando Norris's engine that basically overheated, right? It was
Yeah.
yeah,
Melted
so-
his rear suspension.
exactly, and that just that explains a lot of it. Like it was a brutally hot day that
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, it was like when you're sitting on the track or when you walk in the track too, the heat just comes up from the asphalt and you're thinking like, man, imagine doing this with overalls on, balaclava, gloves, helmet, boots in a
Like-
hot ass car.
Like, yeah,
It's crazy.
You're gonna be sweating, and I mean, we got to see the drivers' parade like from where we were. I think we were with the distance between the two fences were probably only 15 feet, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Getting to see all the drivers all close up like that. And I love Daniel Ricciardo's smile throughout the entire thing. I
Yeah,
think he
get the
realized he
crowd
has
going.
He had a lot of Canadian fans there. I saw a lot of Renault hats. And I think you were saying like there was not a whole lot of places to buy them, and they were sold out by the end of the weekend. Where like obviously like for Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull had like boots all the way throughout, and
Yep.
they were never like sold out or anything like that. So it was interesting.
Yeah, he was a popular one for sure. But yeah, it was good. And some of the footage that you took too, it's up on our channel in our Canadian Grand Prix
Mm-hmm.
playlist. So check that out if you haven't. But that's good. Yeah, we'll hopefully many more
Yeah,
more to
exactly.
come, and hopefully next year we'll be able to do something a little more extensive for
Yeah.
our home race with all three of us, and maybe get a press pass. Hello, Formula One. Get us one of those.
Well, we were close, but they wanted us to buy a paddock pass, right? Which is like thousands of dollars.
Oh yeah, well, and the other thing is like, this for smaller media, it's a lot more stricter to
Yeah.
get in and stuff too.
Yeah, I
but,
can see that.
Yeah. Oh well, we got plenty of time. So
Yeah,
it should be good.
exactly.
All right, so let's get into the Austrian Grand Prix, first back-to-back of the year. So it's a little bit strange because typically in previous years we would already had a back-to-back by now,
Yeah.
usually kind of like a China Bahrain type of thing. But they spread out the schedule a little bit more this season, so it's kind of it feels a bit odd to have Formula One in a back-to-back week, but it's kind of it's a good thing, I guess, because of how boring the previous race was and how upset people were at it.
Oh my god. I mean, I didn't watch the entire race because unfortunately I was doing a Game of Thrones tour at the same time. But yeah, I watched the highlights for qualifying and the race afterwards, and I was like, man, like this is. I'm kind of glad I missed that race because it did not seem very interesting at all. except for like Daniel Ricciardo and like his little incidents and then his comments after the race, which was probably the most interesting part. Interesting interview I've seen other than "suck my balls, mate." But yeah, like it was just. I think you tweeted, like, I don't know if it was on the backmarkers page or yourself. It's like if the race is pretty much settled at like right at the beginning, like before the race even started, it was pretty much confirmed like what was going to be happening.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean that's kind of disappointing to see. I think Vettel got up a few spots. I think that was probably the only real thing that really happened. And I think Lando Norris had a pretty good drive, right?
Yeah, and then had mechanical issues at the end, which kind of set him back. But then, like, Ricardo's penalty jumped him up again.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, me and Tyler were saying too in our recap that he was the driver of the day for all
sure.
of us as well. And yeah, like I said, that incident was really the only exciting part of the race, and then that got penalized by both of them.
Mm-hmm.
And the interview that Shaker was talking about with Ricardo was Grosjean earlier in the race. There was sort of a similar battle that went on where Ricardo went off track. And I think it was the Dutch TV. There's a Dutch reporter. I think he works for Ziggo Sport or Ziggo TV. The Dutch fans definitely know who I'm talking about. He's got like a really unique personality and has got like a really good banter with the drivers.
Yeah.
You should check out interviews with him and Vettel. They're really funny, and you know he's a funny guy. And yeah, he was like your battle with Grosjean. You know, he was complaining about you. Oh, he pushed me off the track. And Ricardo was like. It's like Grosjean. He's like, what the fuck was I doing? Like, when was I racing Grosjean?
I mean, that kind of shows you like how into the race these drivers get. They don't even
Yeah, it's
realize
true.
who they're racing half the time. And yeah, like it kind of just sets it. 'Cause, you know, these racers are really into it, and half the time they're paying attention to just the track and what's going on behind them rather than who they're actually racing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a very interesting interview overall. I think he said the F word a few times too.
And I believe he was live on Dutch TV at the
Yeah.
time too, because I heard crowd laughter in the background because I
Yeah.
think they were airing it live. But yeah, it was funny. So yeah, but you know, heading into this weekend, it's a good chance for an exciting race to kind of redeem what we had in France. And Austria is kind of one of those circuits and one of those races where we get a lot of unpredictability.
Well, yeah, last year for sure with Max ending up winning that race completely. Ended up winning that race, so yeah, it should be a very interesting race for sure.
And Kimi Räikkönen as well provided us with some good racing. Vettel obviously last year too was good. Last year's race marked the first double DNF for Mercedes since 1955. that stat there. It's a track where it's an old school type of track. It's been around since 1970, on and off the calendar in F1, but has been back for the last couple of years. And it's an old school track, you know, grass runoffs, gravel traps. It's not a parking lot like Circuit Paul Ricard. So we should not have, you know, any penalty issues like we've had in the last couple of races about like, track limits and overtaking and stuff like that. So it's going to be interesting this weekend because at this point in the season, Mercedes winning all the races so far, they're the favorites heading into every race.
Yeah.
That's pretty obvious. Now, this is a track that could favor Ferrari's performance, but you can't really put your chips in Ferrari's basket right now because they just haven't shown, even at the tracks that they were supposed to do well at, they just weren't able to convert race wins. Some through the fault of their own, some that weren't. So it's another one of those scenarios where you got to be leaning toward Mercedes because until they lose a race, then
I mean,
who else are you gonna pick?
They haven't had a wrong step this entire season.
They really haven't.
No, like they haven't. There hasn't been an incident where they've kind of messed up. And I think you guys talked about in the podcast were about Lewis Hamilton. You know how like we kind of underappreciate him for a lot of races, but he is one of those drivers that is very exciting to see. Because he is a pure racer in the end of it. He'll get into position and he'll hold that position till the very end, and it's hard to see that sometimes in a lot of drivers. So, and yeah, it should be a very interesting race to see what happens with Mercedes, with Red Bull, with Ferrari in general, and to see some of the other drivers kind of come out and see their performances. I'm expecting quite a lot from McLaren with their last couple of tracks. So I guess we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I think they're expecting a lot too. And in terms of the track characteristics, there's not too much tire stress that goes on at this circuit. I think Pirelli is sort of ranked at around 2 on their guide. We got the C2s and the 3s and the 4s for this weekend. But with the really hot temperatures in Austria, and we saw in France as well, again, tire management is going to be another huge talking point as we head into the race. And it's going to affect qualifying as well, too. And we'll get into what the selected sets are for each team. But if we're going to get a lot of issues of tires blistering, we've seen that in previous Austrian Grand Prix. With the thinner tread, maybe we won't get as much blistering. Mercedes probably won't suffer as much as they have in previous races at Austria. But again, it's going to be so hot on the Sunday and all weekend.
I think I was just reading today. Europe is expecting like the highest temperatures they've ever seen. I think Germany was saying their roads might melt.
Yeah.
So I mean, Austria is pretty close to Germany, so it should be very. I'm sure they'll be expecting around the same temperatures as well. So it should be very interesting.
So teams might be favoring the harder of the compounds, the white C2s or even the C3s, and when we look at the selected sets, a little bit different. France saw the top 4 and 5 roughly go with the same amount of tires, but when we look at, for example, Lewis Hamilton, who's opted for 2 of the sets of the white hard C2s, versus somebody like Charles Leclerc, for example, who's only gone with 1 set. I think one of the more interesting things out of the top 3 teams is Vettel has gone with 4 of the yellow C3, so the mediums, versus Lewis, who's only gone with 2.
Interesting.
Now, obviously, these are selected for a couple weeks in advance of the race. I think much longer than that. So expect the teams, I think, to come out in qualifying in Q2 on the C3. So Mercedes, Ferrari, the Red Bull of Max Verstappen, I think will probably try it out on the medium C3. I think Pierre Gasly might have a little bit of a struggle, but.
I just find it funny that we don't consider Pierre Gasly in one of those debates. It's just Max Verstappen all the way.
Yeah, I feel bad for the guy because he definitely has talent, but she's been thrown into the tough situation. And me and Tyler were talking about how Danny Kvyat is the probable replacement for him if he doesn't have a big weekend and the next couple races. This is a huge race for not only Gasly but Red Bull as well because it is their home race.
Yeah, exactly.
So they really need a good result. Unfortunately, to me, they're not going to have the pace or the performance to win this race, obviously. I think that they'll be really fighting hard to try and get that last podium place. So Red Bull is one of those teams we haven't talked about too much in the season. It's been predominantly Ferrari and Mercedes, but they've underperformed just as much as Ferrari has.
Yes, for sure.
And one of their biggest chances of winning a race has already passed in the Monaco
you know what?
Grand Prix.
I wouldn't say either of those. Like Ferrari has underperformed a little bit, but I think it's overshadowed by the fact that Mercedes has just been dominating every single race.
Yeah, that too.
And like I would say compared to last year, for sure they've kind of been underperforming. But like I wouldn't blame like Red Bull overall, like the team overall, for the disadvantage that they've had. Like they've definitely stepped up their game a little bit compared to what the engine that they had last year with Renault and now that they're working with Honda. But yeah, like I agree. I don't really see them. It's going to be hard for Red Bull in general to compete with Ferrari and Mercedes this year.
And they were expecting to be able to compete for second in the championship this year. I know in early winter testing we thought that they'd be, battling Mercedes for second, and then obviously that was completely wrong. But it was interesting. I was listening to the build up to the weekend on Sky Sports, and they were talking about the whole Pierre Gasly situation. And Paul di Resta made an interesting point, which was that the underperformance of Red Bull, if they don't turn that around quickly in terms of the rest of this season in 2020, Max is going to be looking elsewhere.
Oh, I could totally see it.
And we've talked about that before. And then like if Verstappen leaves, who are the drivers that are going to be coming in for Red Bull? Because they're not going to have a superstar that's going to come in.
No.
So, I mean, he was saying, you hope to not see a team like that fold. Now, I think that's a little too extreme at this point to say that that's what Red Bull would do. But it's an interesting point. Like if Verstappen leaves for a Mercedes, for example, in the next 2 or 3 years, because Red Bull's not going to give them a good enough car, Red Bull is going to be left with a tough decision as to who the drivers will be.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still seeing a very beginning of Red Bull again with them, letting go of Daniel Ricciardo, obviously having Max Verstappen as their main driver, getting Honda on the bill for their the first ever year. So I agree. Within the next maybe 2 to 3 years, if Red Bull doesn't step it up, that he could definitely be leaving. But I think it's still kind of like a beginning for them with this Honda engine, and I think they could see some improvements next year. Unfortunately, I don't see Pierre Gasly being on this team next year as much as he's like you said, he's a very talented driver, but to be racing in the top 3 teams of F1, you got to be performing in and out every week. You got to be up in the top 6, and I think he's made the top 6 maybe once, maybe not even. I'm at the top of my head, I can't think of it, but yeah,
once or twice, yeah.
So yeah, it's gonna be the second half of the season is gonna be it's gonna be Pierre Gasly having to step up and showing that he should be staying on Red Bull.
Yeah, for sure.
Because we saw what he could do with Toro Rosso last year. He had the competition. He stepped up in a few races, got those. Didn't get a podium, but he still had some great races throughout it, and we just haven't seen it this year from him, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's tough in a team like Red Bull because they want you to deliver right away,
Mm-hmm.
and if you're not, they've shown in the past they're not afraid to make that change. So
Yeah.
we'll see. Like I said, we'll see how it goes. I hope he can have a good weekend after what was probably his worst weekend in F1 in France.
Which is unfortunate because it was his home race as well.
Right, and now you go into another big pressure situation being the team's home race, and there's a lot of pressure there. So we'll see how Red Bull can go, but they're probably going to be third best this weekend, I think.
Yeah.
Getting back to the track a little bit here, it's an interesting location for this track because it's pretty much in the mountains. In Austria. It's about 2 hours away from Vienna. It's Spielberg at the Red Bull Ring. 4.3 kilometer circuit, 10 turns, and elevation changes are a lot of what dominates this track, especially going from turn 2 and turn 3. Turn 3 is also a little bit off camber. It's coming downhill, so spotting your braking zone and the exit of that corner is a bit tricky sometimes. But there are overtaking opportunities. The thing is with this track with the grass runoffs, if you go off, you're making a mistake.
Yeah.
So that will make things a little bit more exciting, I hope, because it's not like Paul Ricard where drivers can just easily rejoin the track.
Yeah.
It's a track that punishes you if you make a mistake like that. So that will be interesting to see if the actual on-track racing can be better this weekend. And I just wanted to mention, too, about Ferrari, as we get into sort of who are the favorites into this weekend. Ferrari haven't won a race in 8 months.
Damn.
And Kimi was the last one to do that.
Kimi also has the fastest he has a lap record for this track.
That's right.
So
8 months from a Ferrari win, and I think longer for Vettel since his last win, which was in Belgium last year. So that would be probably 9 months and a little bit more.
It was a while ago. I guess Kimi would have had the last one. Was it Italy?
U.S.
U.S. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Should have won Italy, but
yeah.
Yeah.
I always forget that he didn't. I always think that he did win. But yeah, that's a very disappointing actually.
It was rough to hear. I was like, wow, 8 months. And Mercedes, I think that was it their 10th? Yeah, I think it was their 10th Grand Prix win in a row, dating back to Brazil last year. Yeah.
Wow.
So Lewis Hamilton looking to make it 5 straight wins in a row. He's only done that once before in his career.
Mm-hmm.
So he's on an incredible hot streak at the moment. I don't know. I think Ferrari has a decent chance at this race. The GPS data shows in France that they still do have an advantage on the straights and the high-speed corners.
Mm-hmm.
And Austria, first sector, second sector, especially, there are some straights for sure. And there are some high-speed corners.
Mm-hmm.
Sector 3, again, excuse me, you get some low to medium speed corners, so that's probably where Ferrari are going to struggle more.
Yeah.
And where Mercedes is going to claw back their pace. But there's not a whole lot of really low speed corners or chicanes or anything like that.
No, there isn't.
And it's mainly, elongated, prolonged corners. It's going to be difficult on the brakes. It's going to be difficult on the cooling system of the cars, not just because of track temperatures, but because it's a short track. I think what was Kimi's lap record?
106.
Yeah, 106 was a very short lap, but it's a very busy lap, and it's a technical lap, so it's not as easy as it may seem. And we saw last year with the double DNF for Mercedes, we saw Hulkenberg's engine go. It's going to be a race of attrition,
Mm-hmm.
I think, at this point in the season and with the really high temperatures. So expect to see, I think, a few mechanical failures in this race.
Yeah, I can totally see that.
Yeah. I
I
think
mean, I
that
expect it, sort of.
yeah, I think the drivers are going to have to do a lot of managing in terms of not only the tires but the cooling as well,
Mm-hmm.
because it'll be really hot for the cars. So we'll see. I think it's a good track for Charles Leclerc. He won here in GP2 and GP3
Okay.
and was on pole position, so he's comfortable with this track. Vettel has never won at this track. I think he has a
Really?
pole position, if I'm not mistaken, but he's never won here before. So good time to do it for the first time,
exactly.
right?
You know, and get your first win in 9 months.
Yeah,
and,
yeah, exactly. So it wouldn't be a bad time for him to get the first win. So again, Ferrari, they're going to be testing some new parts in the free practice sessions, and I'm sure as you guys are listening to this, you'll probably be able to see if they've been working or not in the early free practice sessions. So let's see what happens there. It didn't really work in France.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what the reason why. Was it because of the tires? Was it because of the front wing update just didn't work? They're still doing a lot of trying to figure out what really is the issue with the car and where they can gain back the performance.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see what happens there. But I still think that right now Mercedes are the favorites for another one too.
I agree. I mean, I think we were talking earlier a few days ago on our group chat. I mean, I don't see any other team trying to catch up to Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas at the moment. They've jumped far ahead. Obviously, the season isn't completely over. We could still see some up and downs, but I
Right.
mean, if they continue in the form that they're in, I'm pretty sure the championship is already set and who's going to be winning.
Yeah, I would be shocked if it came down to the wire
Yeah.
in the end. And the only way that could happen is if Mercedes were to implode,
Yeah.
which I would say there's a 99.9% chance that will not happen.
Mm-hmm.
And even when you look at the comparison between, because you remember last year we're at the German Grand Prix, obviously when Vettel crashed, but their CEO passed away,
Yep.
and that really shook them, and it seemed to sort of destabilize the team. But when you look at Mercedes, when Niki Lauda passed away, they've just ramped it up even more
Yeah,
since then.
exactly. They've stepped up their game. You know, they're doing it for Nikki. So it's yeah, and that's probably the big compare. That's a good comparison with the Ferrari CEO. That's a huge loss for them, huge loss for Mercedes as well. But yeah, like we haven't seen a change in how much their drive to win, and I mean I think Lewis Hamilton kind of is using that to fuel himself to be even better than he was in every other year. So it should be. Like you said, I don't see it happening 99.9%. I don't see Mercedes messing it up this year unless
Yeah.
they get maybe one or two DNFs throughout the season, but I really don't think that's going to affect the form Hamilton and Bottas are in at the moment.
Yeah, maybe one, maybe two. You're probably not going to see a double DNF like we did last year.
Yeah.
Because Mercedes would have probably fixed those issues or put something in place to make sure the car. And the other thing too is when you have those leads in races and stuff, it's easier to just turn down the engine
Yeah.
and save different components like the gearbox and the other parts of the engine. So, and when you look at sort of the allocation, they haven't exceeded any extra engine parts or turbochargers or anything like that. So they're not going to be set for any grid penalties anytime soon. So yeah, I completely agree. I think the championship, both of them are the constructors for sure is done. The drivers' championship, we'll see how the next couple races go, but it could still get close if Valtteri were to pull the gap back before the summer break.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen Lewis typically step things up after the summer break.
Mm-hmm.
So will we see a different pattern this year where he's driven really well in the first half of the season? Will there be a dip of form in the last half of the season? We don't know. I think Valtteri needs to get his elbows out a little bit more now.
Yeah.
If he wants to still stay in the fight for the championship like he did the first couple races.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way I think to salvage this season and make it a lot more entertaining for us fans.
Yeah, exactly.
And possibly the only way Mercedes could give up that lead is if their drivers start to knock each other out of races, which with Valtteri, I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, he seems like a very relaxed and nice guy. I don't see him trying to mess up a drive for one of his teammates.
Yeah.
We've seen it before with Rosberg and Hamilton, but I don't see as the Mercedes partnership at the moment as that kind of situation.
No. And I think Valtteri is very capable of beating him, but to do it over 21 races is a whole nother question.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. We'll see. It's just so surprising how quickly the gap went up after China and Baku. It was a close fight, and now all of a sudden Lewis has got almost a 40-point advantage over Valtteri,
Yeah, exactly.
and then it's I think up to close to 70 now over Sebastian Vettel.
Here, actually, I can pull it up right now. Driver standings. Yeah, so we're looking at Hamilton with 187, Bottas with 151, and Vettel with 111 in third, and then Verstappen behind with 100,
Yeah.
and then Leclerc with 87 and a 50-point difference after that, pretty much.
Yeah. After that, it's well, it's best of the rest battle after
Yeah,
that, but
exactly.
doesn't really get close. So yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, like I said before, until I see a different team win, I'm gonna pick another
Yeah.
Mercedes one too. But before we get into the predictions, we'll just get into some other news. Actually, something that relates to what will be happening today. The FIA has called the teams to a meeting on Friday not during the free practice sessions, but afterwards, because they want to see and they want to maybe try and plan a switch to the 2018 spec tires after the summer break.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we've heard a lot of complaints about the 2019 Pirelli tires, the thinner tread. Really, the only two teams that have managed to figure out the tires in order to work with their car has been McLaren and Mercedes, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
All the other teams have seemed to struggle. Ferrari, Red Bull, Racing Point, Renault. Renault talked about it last weekend in France. They brought all these updates, and then because of the tires not being able to switch on at the right time,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of negates the updates.
Yeah.
So I believe I was reading that there needs to be 7 teams that vote in favor of this. But the issue is that obviously Mercedes will vote against it.
Yeah,
McLaren will vote
probably
against
vote
it.
against it.
And then the Mercedes manufacturer or the teams that supply a Mercedes engine, so like Williams, Racing Point, they're probably most likely going to vote against it as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Mercedes will put a little bit of pressure to say, hey, vote against this, right? So it'll be interesting to see what comes of this. I would like to see a switch back to the 2018 tires because it felt like we didn't really talk about tires this much last season.
No, I don't think we did, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think tires are a big issue this year. Now, how did Mercedes and McLaren get it right and all the other teams get it so wrong? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if other teams were working with Pirelli, were Mercedes and McLaren working close with Pirelli, and the other teams just were not anticipating it to be as big of a factor. I don't know. So we'll see what comes in the meeting, but last year it just wasn't as much as a factor, and the racing was a lot closer.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. But that is happening in Austria this weekend, so it would be nice to see something changed, but then again, I don't think it'll go through.
No, I mean it'd be nice to see if there was a change, but I agree with you. I don't see it really happening. With Ferrari kind of leading the pack with that. So.
And in other news, actually, some interesting news about Max Verstappen. He recently came out and said that he would like to race the 24-hour of Le Mans with his
really?
dad.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, so Max and Josh in the 24 hours of Le Mans. I think it would be really interesting.
That
and
would
I think Kevin Magnussen was even talking about doing it with his dad, Jan Magnussen, who races sports cars as well. So he didn't really put a timeline on it, and he said he didn't have any conversations with Red Bull. Obviously, Aston Martin have developed a hypercar for the new class in Le Mans and WEC, and Red Bull has helped out with a little bit of the engineering and the build of that car.
Mm-hmm.
So whether Max would be driving for the Aston Martin, it would make sense.
Yeah.
Obviously, them being a title partner of Red Bull. But he's expressed interest. He said that he really enjoys watching the race, the night session and all just the different classes of cars and being able to drive at such a historic race.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like he's put some serious thought into it. Now, there isn't anything in the works. He hasn't talked with Red Bull personally about it, so he's just maybe throwing it out there. But he'd like to do it even during while he's still in F1, and it's possible because Nico Hülkenberg did it.
Nico Hülkenberg's done it.
Alonso did it last year.
Exactly. So I see it as a possibility. And I think with the name that he's getting in the entire, racing community, I think, Red Bull and Aston Martin would try to kind of make that happen for him. Get, sponsorships at the end of the day, and it would be more money in their pockets. But
Yeah.
it'd be very interesting to see, and I'd probably probably watch a little bit more because of it. I mean, he's already attracted so many Dutch fans back into F1, so it's just a win-win situation in general. So
Yeah, it makes sense, and especially if you were to do it in, let's say, the first year that Aston Martin enters into the 24-hour Le Mans, I think,
yeah,
like you said, for sponsors and just business, it would be massive.
yeah,
Because Max Verstappen right now is probably the hottest name in F1 and
hmm
I'm sure in motorsports as well. So he'd bring a lot to that race, and like we've seen with Alonso, the effect that Alonso has. I mean,
yeah,
before that, I didn't really watch too much of the Le Mans 24-hour, but you hear Fernando Alonso's in it, and then you start to pay attention to it.
exactly.
So, and there's a lot of former F1 drivers that participate in the 24 Hours of Le Mans race
hmm
every season. So it's something that I think that he could be good at, and I would love to see him in there.
Yeah.
And if Kevin Magnussen too wants to get involved, I just think it'd be really cool if he did it with his dad.
Well, yeah, for both of them, if you're doing with somebody that basically got you into racing, kind of made you put in all the effort to get you to be an F1 driver, like it'd be interesting, to go back and do it with your dad, and it probably is a bigger thing for him. I'm sure if he the way that he's talking about it, if he was offered to do it with just another driver, I'm sure he would turn it down. He was like, no, like this is something I want to do with my family. This is something I want to do with my dad, and kind of make the most out of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, good for him though. It'd be nice to expand his talents in the world of motorsport.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's get into. Oh, just a quick note as well. Alex Albon is getting the Spec 3 Honda engine for this weekend, so expect some penalties for him. So same with like Kvyat had in France. So
Yeah.
he'll probably be at the back of the grid. But all right, let's get into our race predictions. So I'll go first. As you could expect, I'm going with a Mercedes 1-2 for this race.
Yeah.
I'll say Valtteri wins this race.
Okay.
He's done well at this track. He's won here before. He's got a pole position here as well. He's comfortable at this track, and even when he was with Williams, he did really well at the Red Bull Ring. So I think Valtteri will snap this winning streak of Lewis Hamilton and get first place.
Mm-hmm.
I think Hamilton will get second, obviously, and Sebastian Vettel in third.
Okay.
My X factor and team to look out for, I'm going to go with McLaren again for this weekend. I think that they're running on a couple of good races here, and in France too. They were kind of downplaying their chances, and it ended up being a really good weekend for them, minus the errors with, the technical issues with Lando Norris. But I think they're riding a pretty big wave right now, and fourth in the constructors. Renault's close behind, so they're going to want to keep up the pressure on them. But yeah, I'm going to look for McLaren this weekend to have another good result.
Interesting. Mine's actually very similar. I'm obviously also going with a Mercedes 1-2 finish. Valtteri first as well, Hamilton second, but I'm actually going with Charles Leclerc as my third.
Oh, okay.
I would like to see him up there. I was originally going to put Charles Leclerc first, but I know I'm going to be wrong.
That's why, right? I said Vettel for France, and it was just not even close.
Yeah, like I as much as I want to see another driver win, I know it's a hard possibility at the moment. And I'm actually going with McLaren as my dark horse too. I'm interested I'm interested to see both Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris doing really well. I'm not favoring either of those drivers. I like to see Lando Norris drive a little bit more, but I think they're both going to have some pretty good chances for this race. I mean, Carlos Sainz had a pretty good race for France as well, so I could see it going both ways. Both of them having a pretty good race and being up there with the rest of the top six. So.
Yep. I think we'll also probably get a couple of retirements as well.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of failures here and there. So we'll be on the lookout for that. I also think Racing Point too could surprise some.
I was
teams as
actually
well.
just thinking the same thing. I'm like, I could see Racing Point having a pretty decent race in this one. So, well, it should be interesting.
Yeah, because what place are they in the constructors? I was looking at this recently, and it surprised me that they were actually not in a bad position, considering some of the problems and the slow start that they've had to this season. I think they're around 7th or so in the constructor standings, but they're still within touching distance.
They're tied for 6th with Alfa Romeo.
Right. Okay.
And then Renault is ahead of them by 13 points with 32, and then McLaren is up in 4th with 40.
Yeah. So I mean, it's really a P6 or P7 double points finish for the team, and you're right in there for the fight for best of the rest. So it surprised me a little bit just because they've had a quieter season and they've struggled a little bit more with all the changes to their team.
Mm-hmm.
But there's another team that they thought they were going to have a bad weekend in France, and although they finished at 12 and 13, they still salvaged a pretty decent weekend, and Perez getting into Q3. So we're on Lance Stroll Q1 watch again.
Yeah.
If he gets out of Q1, we'll get his bobblehead next. I think it's like his 12th or 13th in a row that he hasn't gotten out of Q1. So
It was in France, right, where Crofty referred to Racing Point as Force India.
yeah, he did.
Okay.
Every race almost.
Oh man, it's the fact that they didn't change any of their colors and kept everything similar. I can see him still having issues. And I remember us talking to him back at the unveiling, and he was like, "I was just hoping I didn't say Force India. That was that was my biggest note to myself that I didn't say it." It's a hard habit to break when you've been seeing a team race for that long, and just to change their name and keep everything else the same. So it's a hard. So
by race 18, 19, I think he'll get it.
I think he'll get it.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that'll about do it for us. I think we covered everything that we can for the most part. Yeah, it's a little bit later than usual that we do our preview, but with the back-to-back, it kind of gets all pushed back. So we'll see. We'll see what the first couple practice sessions bring us, but fingers crossed, no matter what the results are, is that we just get an exciting race. It's been a couple of races since we've had, kind of actually since Canada, really, but we want to get more exciting races, and even if Mercedes has to win, then
I would like to see less race officials involved.
That too. That would be nice. I think we'll get it. I think we'll get it this weekend. I think the track helps a lot with that, actually. Paul Ricard is just super easy to give drivers those types of penalties because there's so many runoff areas that you can go to.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Austria is different in that respect, so that'll be good. F1 Fantasy 2, update that on our Twitter. I think we posted that yesterday. So check that out for the updated standings. I think that's relatively closer than the actual championship. So we'll see how it goes. And like we mentioned in the previous episodes, we're brainstorming some new content ideas for after the summer break. So if you got any ideas, drop it in the comments or send us a tweet. I know a couple of you sent us some tweets with your predictions for the Austrian Grand Prix, and it was roughly the same. Mercedes 1-2.
I mean, it's just the way it is.
Yeah, I think somebody else also said Mercedes crashed into each other on the opening lap, so that's an interesting one.
Ooh, that is an interesting prediction, so maybe.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, if you guys haven't done so already, subscribe to us down below. Follow us on all of our social media, and as usual, we'll be back for our recap, and Canada Day is coming up this Monday. So
yeah, just after the race.
Yeah, so we'll see if we can get that out before our own holiday here.
Perfect.
In Canada. All right.
That's a goal.
Let's hope. Fingers crossed for a good race in Austria. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.